Before we begin, I want to say that I will be talking spoilers at the end of this review after I give my letter grade for this film. If you would like to avoid spoilers, you can click off this video after I give my score, but this film has some incredible moments in it that I must talk about. But don't worry, I will warn you before the spoiler section, and the review itself will be spoiler-free and only refer to things that can be seen in the trailers. Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to Let's Talk, the series where we have the exaggerated swagger of a black teen. This is your friendly neighborhood Birdman, and today we're talking Spider-Man No Way Home. No Way Home is the third MCU Spider-Man film, and it continues the story where we left off in Far From Home. Peter has saved London from being attacked by Mysterio, but before he dies, Mysterio records footage of the incident and frames Peter for his death. This footage is leaked to the Alex Jones-esque J. Jonah Jameson, and along with doctored footage of the event, Mysterio reveals Spider-Man's identity to the world. This has the effect of turning a lot of people against Spider-Man, because people are completely stupid and somehow forgot he helped save the entire universe from Thanos, but I digress. Peter's life and the life of his friends and family are essentially ruined, so he seeks the help of Doctor Strange and asks if Strange can reverse time so that people forget he's Spider-Man. However, the Time Stone no longer exists, so Strange comes up with a spell that will make everyone forget who he is. During the spell, Peter keeps asking for people he loves to remember him, and this botches the spell, instead causing multiversal entities that remember that Peter Parker is Spider-Man to enter this universe. Right off the bat, and I'd like to get this off my chest immediately, this is the best Spider-Man film to date. I think Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2's plot is still about as good as this film's plot, but the highs are higher than that film, the emotional moments are equal to or higher than that film, and this movie's second and third acts are as incredible as Endgame's third act. By this point, you've probably heard the hype behind this film, and I'm here to tell you one thing. Believe it. I have said this before, and when I said it, I received a little bit of backlash for it, but now I think it's inarguable. Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man. He is killer in this movie as Peter Parker, demonstrating his wide range and comic-level understanding of the character that I have been praising since his original appearance 5 years ago in Civil War. Only here, Tom demonstrates a level of depth that rivals Tobey Maguire's appearance as the character in 2004's Spider-Man 2. Gone are the days when you could refer to Tom's Spider-Man as Iron Boy Jr. By the end of this film, Tom's Spider-Man will be seen as the definitive, not only in characterization, but in its level of comic accuracy and fan expectations for the character. Speaking of 2004 Spider-Man 2, a few familiar faces return from that franchise. Due to the botched spell, Doctor Strange inadvertently brings Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus and Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin into the MCU. As expected, both these actors are brilliant, most specifically Willem Dafoe. There is a reason Willem's Green Goblin is beloved, and he shows off exactly why, playing a troubled man with a Hyde and Jekyll-like personality. Willem also brings the physicality, as he proves more than a physical match for Spider-Man, and I like this a lot because it showed just how strong Green Goblin actually is. This is why I love the MCU, because it gets most characters fairly comic accurate, and it does a better job handling characters that may have appeared in another studio's movie. Here, it improves on Sony's original vision of the Green Goblin, as I felt the original Sam Raimi films didn't do a great job at showcasing his physicality. In this movie, he is a powerhouse and shows precisely why Norman Osborn is so dangerous as a Spider-Man villain. He even wears purple. If you've seen the trailers, then you know that not only does the spell bring in Sam Raimi characters, but also characters from Mark Webb's The Amazing Spider-Man series. Jamie Foxx and Rhys Ifans reprise the roles of Electro and the Lizard respectively. Just like The Amazing Spider-Man series itself, I found these characters to be weaker than their Sam Raimi counterparts, but this was mainly due to Lizard not really doing much at all. Jamie Foxx was actually pretty great, and a very threatening villain, and I love that they just redid his character here because he was awful in TASM 2. Sandman from the Raimi universe also appears here, but just like the Lizard, he's relegated to being more of a background character than an important villain like Green Goblin. As for the plot itself, the first act is definitely the weakest, but it's not because it's inherently weak. It's just that the second and third acts are so unbelievably high that it just looks a little messy in comparison. The first act is basically the MCU part of the movie, where every Phase 4 property is contractually obligated to reference the blip, and where the film mentions other MCU characters and sets the stage where all of these events take place. But by the time the multiverse becomes a thing, the film's focus becomes laser-like, and the story becomes a Spider-Man story. And as a Spider-Man fanboy, that's what's most important to me, that this thing feels like a true-to-life Spider-Man adventure. The interactions between Spider-Man and these extra Universal characters are very comic book-like, and although very fan-servicey, actually serve the plot very well. These are the moments where the film is its funniest, and the laughs are not cheap MCU laughs, they're legitimate bits of comedy that 3 generations of Spider-Man fans will love. But by the second act, the film shifts its tone and goes to a much darker and more mature place that personally hit me kinda hard. The film is incredibly emotional, and that is the most important thing a film like this can do, make you actually feel something. As for negatives, there aren't much, but I have 2 very specific ones that were noticeable enough to mention. The first is Doctor Strange's presence in this film, or the lack thereof. Now, I understand this is supposed to be a Spider-Man movie, and I actually like that this film makes Peter the guy to solve these problems. However, they do to Strange what they did to him in Endgame. Make him hold the waterfall. Not an actual waterfall, but a figurative one. He's there to hold things in place. My issue here is, if that's what you're going to do to the not-so-Sorcerer Supreme, then just take him out of the movie's climax altogether. He's gotten one really good fight outside of his own film, and that was Infinity War versus Thanos. Seriously, I feel like the MCU has no idea what to do with this immensely powerful character outside of his own movies, and it's kind of obvious. The second issue with this film is the CGI. Most of it looks great, and it's some of their best work since Infinity War. But then there are times where Spider-Man looks floaty and made out of Play-Doh, and there are instances in the climax where some de-aging CGI is being used, and it looks laughably bad. It's nowhere near as good as it was in Captain Marvel, and it still confounds me how Marvel can literally print $1 billion per film, but still have CGI out of the early 2000s. Overall, I thought this movie was absolutely brilliant. The cast does a wonderful job, with the standouts being Tom Holland himself, Alfred Molina, and Willem Dafoe. Tom brings the heart, Dafoe brings the villain, and Molina brings the conflict. The fan service is tasteful, and it actually serves the plot in a meaningful way. The action set pieces are spectacular, specifically the fights with Doc Ock and Green Goblin, and the climax is right on up there with Avengers Endgame in my opinion. Things that happen in the second act will stun you, make you cry, and then you'll stand up and cheer. Aside from some slightly underused characters like Sandman, Strange, and the Lizard, the movie juggles its large cast very well, and does the multiple villain thing way better than Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 ever could. It's not going to win any filmmaking awards because that's not what makes movies like these great. It's the emotion, the action, the acting from its villains, and a character that grows into what we all knew he would become. It's the sum of its parts that puts it over the top. This is the best Spider-Man film I have ever seen, currently my favorite MCU movie, and after you've seen it, you'll be itching to go back for seconds. I might come to regret this in the future, but I've seen this film twice now, and my opinion has been solidified. I'm giving Spider-Man No Way Home the very first A+ on my channel. Now, here is a spoiler warning. I filmed some footage running down the entire plot after my first viewing of No Way Home, and I wanted to share that with you all because this movie's spoilers are incredible. So if you do not want to be spoiled, run away right now. So those are all my predictions. That Green Goblin kills Aunt May, Toby and Andrew show up but are reluctant to help. They only help because Aunt May dies. Andrew Garfield saves MJ in that falling moment. Venom shows up in the end credit scene, and Matthew Murdock shows up. Those are my predictions.
Perfect.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's your friendly neighborhood Birdman here. We are in the spoiler section. I literally just got in. Got my popcorn right here. Literally just walked in the house, and I wanted to film this spoiler section before I go see it a second time because I have another ticket in a few hours from now. So I just wanted to film this while my thoughts are fresh, and let's talk spoilers. So you know the gist of the story by now. Doctor Strange does a spell that will help everybody forget who Peter Parker is, or Peter Parker's relation to Spider-Man, and you know, everybody will forget that he is Spider-Man. But Peter
messes with the spell, and I think he messes with it 5 times. I think that's what the film said, and he causes a calamity where basically actually the reverse happens. People don't forget who Spider-Man is. People who knew who Spider-Man was comes into this universe, and that of course means the 5 villains that we saw, which was Sandman, the Lizard, Electro, Dr. Octopus, and of course the Green Goblin. So Peter meets up with Dr. Octavius first, and he basically has a fight with him, and this Dr. Octopus has been pulled like from the moment he was fighting Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2. So he has no recollection of ever being good. You know, the tentacles are still controlling him. So he's fighting our Peter Parker, and our Peter Parker's like, who the hell are you? Like, what are you doing here? Like, what's going on? And then Peter removes his mask, and then he's like, you're not Peter. And I think that's something that you guys all saw in the trailer. And then the next thing you know, Doctor Strange warps them into his basement, where he has trapped Dr. Octopus in some sort of cell, and he gives Peter a device that will allow him to trap other villains. And during the fight with Dr. Octavius, Green Goblin shows up, and then Peter's like, oh shit, dude, like there was another guy. So Doctor Strange sends him on a mission, says, go get all these guys and bring him back here and put him in the cell. Meanwhile, Norman Osborn has taken over the Green Goblin personality. So the Green Goblin has been suppressed for a second, and he heads over to Feast because he sees advertisements for Spider-Man. Obviously now everybody knows Spider-Man's connection with May and, you know, Feast. So Norman Osborn sees the advertisements, and he goes to show up, and that's where he learns Peter's connection to Aunt May. But again, this is Norman Osborn, so Norman is basically a good guy, and Peter sees that and he wants to help him. So he comes back to Doctor Strange's lair, and they have like a really cute interaction, him and Dr. Octopus. They're like, dude, you're supposed to be dead. Dr. Octopus says that, and he's like, well, I'm here. So like they have a really cool connection. I thought that was great. So while those guys are there, Peter goes and hunts the other people that have come into the universe, and that's Sandman and Electro. And Flint Marko, the Sandman, is actually good in this movie. Kind of. He's kind of good. I'm getting a lot of notifications on Twitter because I've been talking about this movie, but he is actually helping Peter. Electro is trying to kill him. He recognizes him as Spider-Man. He's like, okay, and just like tries to shock him. And Flint Marko puts up like a wall of sand, and then they basically fight Electro together, and Peter captures Electro eventually. And then Sandman's like, what the hell was that? Like, what'd you just do to him? You just killed him? So Sandman is like kind of nervous. He's like, the fuck are you doing? And then Doctor Strange warps them all back to his lair, and now we got the whole crew together. So actually what Doctor Strange wants to do is to send these guys back, but like through dialogue, we learn that each of the characters were about to die at the moment they were getting taken from their universe at the hands of Spider-Man, or not at the hands of Spider-Man, because we've all seen The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and also Spider-Man 1 and 2 and 3. So we know that certain characters actually don't die, like Sandman doesn't die and the Lizard doesn't die, but they don't know that. So like they figure if they get sent back, then they're going to die. So this actually causes conflict between Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, because Spider-Man is like, yo, like I don't want to kill these guys. What if they can be reformed? So that culminates in a fight between Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, which leaves Doctor Strange stuck in the mirror dimension, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the mirror dimension that he gets stuck in. So Peter decides to help all of these people, and he takes all of them to his condominium that he has been living in, and he tries to find a solution for each one of these guys to turn Sandman back into normal, to drain the electricity from Electro, to fix the inhibitor chip on the back of Dr. Octavius's head, and create a serum that will bring Norman Osborn out of the Green Goblin. Unfortunately, what happens here is that Green Goblin comes out of Norman, and Peter senses it with his spider sense, which I thought was a really great scene. And he figures out that Norman is actually Green Goblin in that moment, and he tries to stop him. But like the entire time, Electro has just been kind of an asshole. Like the entire time, he's like, I kind of like being bad. So basically, they all betray Peter in that moment, except for Dr. Octavius, who got saved. So they put the inhibitor chip on the back of his neck, and he got saved. But like everybody else decides to just fight him. And Lizard was really weird, I thought, because like I didn't feel like he had a good enough reason to actually fight Peter in that moment. But, you know, villain's gonna villain, and they all decide to fight him. So you got Green Goblin, the Lizard, Electro, and the Sandman all deciding to fight Peter in that moment. And Dr. Octavius just escapes. And this kind of brings me to an emotional moment for me personally. Through their fight, Green Goblin kills Aunt May, and I don't know if it's because I've been going through my own personal issues, and the fact that my real life aunt just passed. But it was a really emotional moment for me, actually. So, man, getting kind of heavy. But yeah, May dies, but like not before she delivers the famous with great power comes great responsibility moment. And I thought that was great. I thought it really touched me. It really touched me. Man. And like in that moment, Peter Parker, Tom Holland, just nails the emotion. And I honestly couldn't help myself. I was crying in the theater, man, and it really touched me in that moment. And like I said, I just lost my own aunt in real life, so I felt that moment. So of course that really like bothers Peter Parker, and he goes on something of a small sabbatical, and he's just like, I can't take this. Like I gotta kill the Green Goblin. I have to kill him. And in that moment, you have MJ and Ned. They're like, okay, we got to find Pete. We got to find Pete and, you know, get him through this moment. So Ned has the ability to summon the portals with the sling ring that Doctor Strange has. And he summons a portal and he's like, I wish I could find Peter Parker. And they find Peter Parker. Only it's Andrew Garfield. And they do it again. And it's Tobey Maguire. They both show up in the film. That's right. This happened. This is a thing. This is a thing. Now, I knew this was going to be a thing. Okay. I had a feeling. I've been predicting this for months. For y'all, they're doing the thing. I can't believe it. Like it's amazing to me. Like this is happening. Does this mean that we're going to be getting Tobey and Andrew Garfield? You can't have their villains without them. You can't have it. If Sony and Marvel don't make this happen, this is going to be the biggest disappointment of all time. I'm sorry, like nothing will be a bigger disappointment than this. You thought Cyberpunk was a big disappointment? No, this will be a huge disappointment if they don't bring those two in. That they were both going to show up in this film. They have been lying to us, saying, no, we're not in the film. Well, Tobey didn't lie because Tobey hasn't said anything. Like, I don't even know if he has social media. I think he's actually semi-retired, but god damn. I don't think I've heard a bigger cheer in a theater ever. I thought Avengers Endgame had huge moments. This right here rocked the house. I think we had cheers so loud and so long. There was like a piece of dialogue that I missed that I will probably catch when I go see it a second time, but wow. what a moment. This particular one, Andrew Garfield steals the show. He is fantastic in this movie. And I personally believe this movie is just like The Amazing Spider-Man 3. He gets his closure in this film in multiple ways. And you can see the love and passion that he has for this character. And for all the shit that we give him for the Amazing Spider-Man movies, he nails it. He is fantastic here. And my God, I love him so much. And obviously everybody loves Tobey Maguire. He comes back. He's looking a little bit grizzled. He's obviously much older than, 20 something years ago when those movies came out. But man, what a moment. What a moment. And I'm still just kind of reeling and just shaking from the impact of that moment. But anyway, they both decide to help this universe's Peter because they find out that May has passed, and obviously, that affects them too. They're like, Aunt May, what can we do? How can we help? So the three Spider-Men meet up. They have these really cute interactions with each other. You have Tobey Maguire using his organic webs, and the other two are like, dude, what the fuck? What is that? Like, does it come out of you? Does it come out of anywhere else? And I thought like the jokes in that moment were really good. Fantastic stuff. It's just fan service out the wazoo. And they just have these interactions with each other, explaining certain things that happen in their universe. And I mean, this is on the level of, Cap picking up Mjolnir and everybody returning in the moment where Thanos is going to get snapped in Avengers Endgame. And it's really up there. And I think you guys are going to love that. So anyway, they all got a plan, and they decide to science this shit, where all three Peters work on the science of bringing all of these guys back to the good side. And they again have all these little cute interactions, but then they all meet up at the Statue of Liberty, and that's where you get the big fight. And at first, the three Spider-Men don't work very well together. Like, they're calling each other Peter, but they don't know which Peter they're referring to, so they have to number each other. And they have a really cool moment where one of them uses a web, and it like hits another one off of his web, and he falls to the ground, and then he's trying to web up, and he webs one of the Spider-Men in his face. It's just great comedic moments in this film in that moment. But then they like coalesce and like, here, we gotta work this shit out. And look, you're Spider-Man 1, you're 2, you're 3. And then you get some great three Spider-Man action. And it's top tier. Like, your mind is gonna be like, what? So they fight Sandman, Lizard, and Electro, and they eventually beat them by transforming them back into their previous selves. So Electro gets drained of his electricity. Sandman gets turned back into a man. Lizard obviously gets turned back into Kurt Connors. And in those moments, I thought it was dope that each of the Spider-Man had like their own little interaction with them. So Electro, Max Dillon was talking to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and then you had Toby talking to Sandman, and like I just thought these moments were really, really cool. Another great moment in this thing was that MJ gets knocked off a beam, and Tom Holland Spider-Man reaches out to try to save her, and Green Goblin, like I predicted, knocks him out of the air. Andrew Garfield saves MJ from falling. And that also got a really big cheer because we all knew what that meant to him. And he was crying, and it's just an emotional moment, Just that's what I'm saying. Like, he got some closure. And I felt that. And the movie just gives you moments like that, and they hit hard, man. And he saves MJ from falling, and that was it for me. That was great. Gosh, man, this movie got me so freaking emotional. It's man. But anyway, he saves MJ, and then Tom Holland's Spider-Man is really salty at Green Goblin, and they get into a fist fight, and he just bodies him. And we're like, the action here is great, and it's emotional, and it has punch, and it has momentum, and you're just like, oh my God, Tom Holland really wants to kill this guy. He killed Aunt May. So we all felt him. We were like, get his ass, get him. And in the climax, he's getting ready to impale Green Goblin with his own glider. And like a scene that I felt was like ripped right out of Spider-Man 2. Tobey Maguire comes and holds up the glider like that. You know that moment where Tobey Maguire is holding up the wall in Spider-Man 2 when he's trying to save MJ from getting crushed? Like, that's what it felt like. And he's like, no, don't do this. Right when he does that, Tom Holland is getting ready to put the glider down, and then he gets stabbed right in the back. Tobey Maguire gets stabbed right in the back by freaking Green Goblin. And in that moment, Andrew Garfield throws the serum to Tom Holland. He grabs it and then right in the neck, and then they cure Green Goblin. And Tobey Maguire's okay. He didn't die or anything, but like for a moment, we all felt, it was like, oh no. So basically, the way that this thing culminates is that Doctor Strange comes out of the mirror dimension to help, but he's basically trying to hold the multiverse from cracking because due to that spell that he casted earlier, other versions of these characters are pouring through. Like I think I saw Rhino and Scorpion. Those were like two that I saw very specifically that were getting ready to come into this universe. And what happens is that Tom Holland tells Doctor Strange to do the same spell but do it right this time, and that would mean that everybody goes back to their own universe, but that also means everybody in this universe forgets who Tom Holland is. They forget his relation to Spider-Man. They all forget, everybody in the world forgets who Peter Parker is in relation to Spider-Man. And I mean everybody. Happy, Doctor Strange, of course, MJ and Ned. They both forget that Peter Parker exists. So he just basically gets erased from reality. And that's going to rub some people the wrong way, I feel. But I think it was the right thing to do. Because what happens here is that you get comic book Spider-Man now, where nobody knows his identity, and he gets to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And oh my God, the very end of this film, while emotional, it's so great because all the people that were saying that he's Iron Boy Jr. eat a dick now. He creates his own suit by sewing it. He doesn't use any technology because obviously everybody forgot that he's connected to Iron Man now. So he doesn't have the technology anymore. And he creates a comic accurate Spider-Man suit. And it is gorgeous. I almost started crying again. It was amazing. I think I audibly said, wow. And the two guys that were sitting next to me were like, this guy's fucking nuts. But those are the spoilers of No Way Home, and I guess I could say what happens in the mid-credit scene. I won't spoil that. I'll just tell you like who they show, and I was right in my prediction about the mid-credit scene being Venom. So I'll leave it at that. I'll let you guys see what the end credit scene is, the actual after credit scene. I'll leave that to you. But I love this movie, and I'm gonna go see it again. So bye.